First of all, thank you all for joining me, the first ever book club council, as trying something a little different, trying something new. And I want to kind of go into a little bit of why this is even happening, to be honest, because I'm a huge Star Wars fan and I've never read any of the books. I think I've read one book. Well, listen, I'm not a reader. I listened to one book and it was Catalyst, which highly recommend. If you like Rogue One, I highly recommend you check out Catalyst. So good, such a good read. I specifically got that book so I could kind of read it going into Rogue One, but it is an absolutely phenomenal listen, read. So far, it seems like all these books, and they're an absolutely excellent listening experience because it's produced. It's so much fun. But if you didn't know, in early March, I went back to work. We had a 2-year hiatus for COVID and all that stuff, and I was working remotely for 2 years and working well remotely. Just had to throw that in there. So we recently went back to work, and 2 years of having a routine and being able to walk to my office or my desk to get work done versus driving 45 miles to the office and back. Well, 45 there, 45 home. So 90 miles of LA traffic a day. It was a hard transition to get back into. Like, I'm only going back hybrid style, so it's helpful. But I really needed something extra, something that was really going to kind of get my attention for these commutes, because I hadn't been in a commute for 2 years. And I asked the awesome community over on our Discord. You should definitely join, check it out, it's fun. We have a blast there. We got a Star Wars dedicated channel there that we could talk about anything Star Wars related. And I asked everyone there what their favorite book was, because I knew I needed something to really kind of like get my attention off the traffic, driving. And the one that popped up the most was the Thrawn trilogy, the Heir to the Empire, Timothy Zahn. I've heard about this novel. I've heard about this trilogy. I know Thrawn a little bit, and obviously got a little bit more of a taste of him in Star Wars Rebels, which I have watched. But I needed something good to get me through the traffic, and all I can say is just right off the bat, thank you. Because I'm about a third, actually I think I'm about halfway through at this point. We're only talking about chapters 1 through 10 today, but I think I'm about halfway through the book at this point. And just some general thoughts before we jump into the specifics of the story and the chapters. Right off the bat, this book has already kind of blown me away with the story. And I didn't have a lot of expectations going in, not a lot of knowledge, and finding out exactly what this time period was, I feel like it's going to be interesting diving into this book now. Because we obviously have a sequel trilogy. We have The Mandalorian, which takes place in a similar time frame after the fall of the second Death Star. We have Rebels, so now that Thrawn is canon. I think it's going to be interesting going through this content and kind of seeing how it compares. Does it have any impact on the content that we have now? I'm really curious to see what the impact's going to look like. And of course, I'm going to do my best to not throw a lot of shade at the sequel trilogy. I'm going to try my best. It's sometimes just really easy. Sometimes you see something and it's just like, oh, just a really easy softball. You just hit it out of the park. I'm just going to try my best to not do that. But I got to say, through the first, I think like 15 chapters, I think is where I'm at. It's really hard to not have a desire for this story to be the sequel trilogy. Why was this not the story that was told? Like, instead of doing the prequels, why wasn't this the story that was told? And then we could have done the prequels later or something. I love the prequels, by the way. It's just really hard to not have that mindset as you're going through this story and seeing that, like, there are some parallels. There are some things that obviously took place and are canon in the sequel trilogy that I feel like were obviously plucked from this story and, you know, legends and stuff like that. But I talk about it all the time. I'm not a Redcon fan. I don't want things changed. I don't want things eliminated. It's just, it's an impossible thought to not think about what this story could have looked like on a big screen versus reading it or kind of doing the audio thing. But so far, I am absolutely blown away. It's so cool. It hit me with things that I never thought I was gonna get when I started listening to this. And let's just jump right into it. We start out on the Imperial Death Star. That's Star Destroyer. And, you know, Emperor Vader killed, second Death Star is blown up, and there's still some remnants of the Empire in the galaxy. We meet Grand Admiral Thrawn, and I thought it was really interesting that he was the first non-human to be put in the position of Grand Admiral by Palpatine. It just shows how badass Thrawn is. He's amazing, he's super tactical, and obviously we get to learn more about him as this goes, but I also thought it was really, I got a good laugh out of the shade that was thrown at Darth Vader early in this novel. What would have really happened if Thrawn was in charge of the Battle of Endor? I think that's a really cool question. I think it's really interesting to see the kind of what if story that could be told there, because obviously they lost, they got destroyed, and now they're trying to gather up and get their shit back together. And you know, you kind of starting to see the beginning of that. And we're in a battle right away. Thrawn destroys a task force. And this is where you kind of see his personality, his mindset. He's calm, he's collected, smart. And I really like, because again, my first real experience with Thrawn was in Rebels. I like that it feels like Rebels did a really good job of portraying him and kind of taking from what was created here and kind of using that to move forward. And talking about like the whole art thing, and the quote from his, learn about art. When you understand a species' art, you understand that species. It's how he was able to win the fight, and it's probably how he wins lots of his fights, and how he got to where he is in terms of being a Grand Admiral and all that stuff. And I think that was one of my biggest questions going into this, knowing that it's Thrawn, knowing that we have a little bit of experience with him in Rebels, knowing that we're going to get more of him hopefully in the Ahsoka show, because there was a name drop in The Mandalorian with Ahsoka, and I think live action Thrawn would be so amazing. I can't wait to see that play out and see exactly what part of the story they're going to tell. How are they going to do it? Because Thrawn's story needs to be told, and I think that was a really great kind of first introduction into Grand Admiral Thrawn. And jumping into the next chapter, this is where I was absolutely blown away. I was shocked. I was getting emotional. I was driving home in traffic, getting like almost teary-eyed, hearing the open of this chapter. Obi-Wan and Luke? What? I had no idea what we were going to be dealing with. I didn't know Luke was going to be in this. I didn't know Obi-Wan was going to be in this. I didn't know I thought this was like a completely separate story. Had no idea it had links to Return of the Jedi or the original trilogy at all. Like, I legitimately, anything Obi-Wan and Luke, it gets me emotional. It's an amazing story. And hearing Obi-Wan basically tell Luke goodbye, it's like, no, dude, we just started. You can't leave. And it was a powerful moment. And Obi-Wan sends a message that Luke's not the last of the old Jedi, but he's the first of the new. And I absolutely love that. It almost kind of reminded me of Luke in the snow and like basically dying. He's like, Ben, and Obi-Wan's telling him to go see Yoda. I thought that was super cool. And again, Luke's my favorite character of all time in any content. He's above Ragnar, he's above Jon Snow, he's above Frank Castle, like all of them. Luke is my favorite character of all time. So anything that I get with Luke, especially when it's a surprise, it's going to be an emotional moment. And that was quite emotional, getting that kind of open. And then we get Leia. Of course. I mean, once we got Luke and Obi-Wan, I knew what we were kind of dealing with, and I'm like, holy shit, we got Leia. And she goes by Leia Organa Solo, so she's married to Han, cool, and she's pregnant with twins, because of course she is. You know, might as well give her twins, because you know, she was a twin. Keep that story rolling, right? So Luke was having a dream. Leia felt the dream. And the stuff with Leia so far, and like the whole Jedi training and her being taught the Force and all that stuff, I think that is so interesting, and I think it's so cool. But she sends 3PO to go check on Luke, and because she could feel him, which is, of course, they've got that connection. And then we get Han, and he's back to his old tricks, Mos Eisley Cantina, right where we found him when we met him the first time. He's on a mission to hire smugglers to work for the New Republic, which, seeing the Republic getting rebuilt and kind of formed after the fall of the Empire is also a very interesting story. Just seeing the struggles and everyone in their positions, and it's not an easy thing. And Wedge is there too. Love Wedge. Hell yeah, he's backing up Han. Wedge, I believe he's like the only side character to be in every original trilogy movie. I'm pretty sure that, I'm pretty confident in saying that. And he should have been in the sequel trilogy. He should have been like a big boss man, a big general, but I guess there was some stuff that he didn't want to be involved in, and then they threw him like a 2-second cameo in The Rise of Skywalker. But he should have been like a focal point, I feel like. He should have been in charge of everything that they were doing. But I mean, him and Leia, I feel like, should have been the two running the show. But again, I'm not trying to throw shade at the trilogy. Just some thoughts pop into your head as you're kind of going through stuff. The next chapter, chapter 3, is where a familiar name pops up, Mara Jade. I know of her. I don't know really much else besides the name and a couple small tidbits about the character. I don't know if what I've heard is from this novel. I don't know if there's other pieces of content that have Mara Jade in it, but I've heard the name. I kind of know who she is, like kinda. I'm curious to kind of learn about her and officially get some information about Mara Jade, because again, I don't know if what I've heard is from this or if it's from something else. But we meet a new character on a new world. Thrawn shows up with the Imperials, makes a little deal. Luke is mentioned. Mara has a strong reaction to the fact that Vader and the Emperor are dead, because there's some questions like, oh, are they? And she's like, yes. Like, she was very like adamant about it. It was a very kind of strong reaction. Moving on to a really, really fun chapter. I thought chapter 4 was an absolute blast. And there's a lot of names, planets, people in this novel that I'm going to butcher if I try to say it. So if I do butcher it, I apologize. And if I just completely gloss over it, it's because I'm not even going to try to say it. Even listening to the novel, I'm just like, wait, what was that word? What was that? Like there's a planet later on that I'm not even going to try to attempt, but I just wanted to throw that out there. But we're on the Chimera, which is Thrawn's ship, and we're introduced to a new planet, Wayland. Thrawn is looking for the Emperor's private storehouse, and he wants to recruit the Guardian of the Mountain, who he assumes is a Dark Jedi to their cause. Dark Jedi. Hell yeah. I would love to get more Dark Jedi in the canon world. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Just so interesting. Like Mace Windu always kind of felt like he had that in him. He just had that dark side, especially when he was fighting the Emperor. He just had that look in his eyes like, oh damn. I don't think he's a normal Jedi. He's kind of dope. We also get to meet an animal, a Salamari. Salamari is what I'm going to go with. Has the ability to block the Force. What? It's like you could just like put this pet in like a backpack and just run around and be like, oh, I could kill Jedi and I could kill Sith. Like, what? Like, that is so dope. And of course Thrawn has one because he's super smart and calculated, and when it comes to strategy, seems like there's really no one better. But we meet another very interesting character, and Joruus C'baoth. This dude is so intriguing. I would kill to see this story played out in live action. He claims to be the Guardian, but he actually killed the Guardian, and he proceeds to shoot Force lightning at Thrawn, and the animal on that Thrawn has with him protects him and Pelion, who's Thrawn's main officer. And then they proceed to have some negotiations. Thrawn gives C'baoth this massive offer, like, I'll give you Luke, Leia, and her Jedi twins. It's like, wait, what? But the big whammy of this moment is the fact that we find out that it's not the real C'baoth, and he's actually a clone with Force powers. That is super interesting. And the fact that he has Force lightning seems like a really powerful dude. And I feel like, again, flirting and messing with clone content, it's going to be interesting to see where this story goes with the clone stuff, and see how we can kind of compare it to the sequel and that clone situation, or even what we're dealing with in Mandalorian with the cloning stuff. But yeah, I thought that was so interesting. The whole idea of C'baoth being this powerful Force user, but it's not really him. He's actually a clone. We're back with Han, who's giving a report about his mission about recruiting smugglers, and we get Akbar! Yeah, buddy! Akbar, he's not a fan of the plan, and here's a fun name. Boris Falia. I don't know if I got that right. By the way, Akbar, completely disrespected in Last Jedi. Off-camera death, he deserves so much better than that. Just gonna throw that out there. But Borisk is in favor for the rebellion because his faction of Bothans helped get information on the second Death Star. Many Bothans died to bring us this information. That is a really cool little nugget right there. I think that's super awesome. It's interesting to see, again, kind of bringing up some of the struggles of building this new world with a legit government and people in their roles, in their positions, and they all have their opinions, and a new mission's brought up. Han does not like that Leia has to go because this is also really fascinating that Han has this big focus on Leia and her focusing and making like her Force training and her Jedi training like a priority. He wants her to put more focus in it and kind of put politics to the side, but obviously with everything that they're doing and building, the politics keep getting in the way. I feel like, again, it's another one of those moments where I feel like if the sequel trilogy gave us a little bit more, like they gave us that one scene in the last movie about Leia's training. I feel like if they would have done that, I feel like her Mary Poppins moment would have been a little bit more believable. Nah, I take that back. That whole thing was whack, regardless of her first Force powers. I don't care. But still, it'd be really cool to have gotten more information and kind of more, time with Leia, kind of training and seeing exactly where her Force powers were. But Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, and the droids, they all show up on this new planet, and shit absolutely hits the fan. Luke gets separated from Han and Leia. Chewie stayed on the Falcon. All the weapons, except for Luke's lightsaber, were confiscated. I guess they didn't view that as a weapon or didn't know about it or couldn't tell that he had it on him. But it's the first. I have a bad feeling about this in this story, and I think it's absolutely great. The Nagori appeared to put our folks in a really tough spot. Leia reaches out to Luke with the Force, realizes that they have Luke as well, and he's also in a bad situation. We go back to Luke. He hears Leia's call for help. He strikes his saber. He takes them all out. Badass Luke is the best. If we could get more badass Luke, I'm going to be really happy, boy. Always and forever. They managed to get out of the situation, but Leia says they need to go back because the BIMs, they're expecting them, but Han already booked it. He hit light speed. He took off. He's like, fuck that shit, I'm out. And he just fucking booked it. And now Leia was mad, and with the idea that Han didn't check with her and there wasn't enough time to discuss this in a committee. That's another good line that was thrown out there. Han seems very focused on Leia and her Jedi training, as I mentioned before, and suggests that Leia needs her own lightsaber. Luke doesn't seem too excited about the idea of training Leia, and he goes back to the whole thing that Obi-Wan said about Anakin, which, again, another really powerful moment. Took it upon myself to train him as a Jedi. I thought I could instruct him just as well as Yoda. I was wrong. That's always one of those moments that's just really powerful. Just anytime we hear it, anytime, just because, again, the prequels are such a good story, and just everything about Anakin and Obi-Wan and their growth as in a relationship, becoming brothers. It's more than just master and student, and then just seeing the fall and just the turn of Anakin and the failure of Obi-Wan. It was all really tough, and anytime that kind of stuff gets mentioned, it's really difficult. But we're back with a very impatient Sabayoth. This dude, super, super impatient. He just wants his Jedi. It's all he cares about. Palian comes up with a plan to start a rumor about the old Jedi Master recently coming out of hiding, which is very interesting too. Wondering how many Jedi kind of were still around at this point in this story. Sabayoth is obviously one of them. Not really though, because he's a clone, but why is he a clone? Who did it? I think those are really important questions. Back with the New Republic, the Council is disappointed about the mission being aborted. Mon Mothma, what's up, Mon Mothma? Tells Leia that she needs to go back again, and Han, again, talking about Leia's training, that she can't go back. She needs to focus on her training. Mon Mothma understands the need for more Jedi, but she says politics are more important right now, and Leia just keeps getting pulled into this stuff. And the chapter ends with Han saying, it was a lot easier when we were just taking on the Empire. At least we knew who our enemies were, which I think is a really interesting line. I think that's really cool, very interesting, because life back then maybe felt simpler for Han. Smuggler dude, transitioned into this hero, and you always kind of knew exactly what you were dealing with, and now you've got all this stuff going on. You're trying to build and grow this new galaxy without the Empire, and all that stuff's going on. It's just very interesting to see all of this after the fall of the Empire. It seems like there's a lot of people struggling here, and I think that's a really strong story. But we're back with the Imperials. The attack on the planet that this is one of the planets that I will not attempt to say. Like many of them in this book, they're just very challenging. Sabaoth is coordinating the attack, and he's doing a good job. Of course, Sabaoth wants to know where his Jedi are. Patience were not a virtue giving to this clone. He has no patience. He made a deal. He wants Luke, Leia, and the twins. That's just all he cares about. That's what his focus is on. We meet back up with Mara Jade. They're watching the battle from the Wild Card Day ship. Luke gets mentioned again. Not much else really happens there. We're back with Luke and Leia doing Jedi training with her new saber. Leia is struggling a bit and questions her abilities. Han shows up, takes Leia away to check out the attack that was just previously mentioned. Luke's not going because Jedi are not welcome on that planet. There was mention of a Dark Jedi going bad during the Clone Wars and traveling to Dagobah. Hell yeah, we're going to Dagobah. Let's go. Luke is concerned that he can't go and be with Leia to protect, but Wedge, the Rogue Squadron, will be there to protect. Awesome. Love that. Han makes a funny comment about Leia not always needing Big Brother, and then Luke kind of talking about, he's like, well, we actually don't know. We never found out who was older, but thanks to Star Wars canon, Luke is Big Bro. He was born first. And going back to Dagobah. Very excited for that. And then the final chapter that we're going to talk about today, Leia, Han, and Wedge on a mission. Sabaoth is mentioned, so the plan to get his name out there is working. As they're about to leave, they're ambushed. Nagori attack. I hope I said that right. And they even used a fake Millennium Falcon, which is super dope that there's even another one of those ships available for them to go get. Awesome. And Leia doesn't feel Chewie on the Falcon, so they realize that it's a fake. Great job, Leia, using those Force powers. Good job. You're very strong with the Force. My sister had that power too. Han uses her saber. And here's a quick little fun quiz for you. Can you name all the people who use lightsabers in the original trilogy? I believe it's only 4. Go. Han uses her saber to destroy the fake Falcon, and they manage to escape. Han decides not to take Leia back to Coruscant, but instead they go visit Lando. This feels like a very similar situation, and there we are through the first 10 episodes. And overall, through this first basic third of this book, I am blown away by this frickin' story. I absolutely love it. Just everything that we're getting with Luke, with Leia, with Han, just the Sabaoth character is amazing. Getting that moment with Obi-Wan was amazing. And it's just, again, I mentioned at the very beginning, but it really feels like this story should have been told live action. It is so good and interesting, just seeing everything, just the way the story and the foundation has been built, I feel like through this first third. So cool. Such a good story. And just I feel like Timothy Zahn just really understands this world in Star Wars. That's what it feels like. I've never read any of his novels before, but it just feels like he understands this. And it feels right, exactly. It's just one of those things where, like, the whole Luke training Leia thing and Leia struggling and her being pregnant with twins and just Thrawn trying to build up this empire that has fallen. I'm so fascinated with this and just to keep going. I feel like this novel, it could potentially hurt some stories because of how good this seems to be so far. I don't want to do that. I want to just keep everything separate and do my best because I know this isn't canon. I know this is a legend story, but it's still just so well done already. And again, I'm a little ahead. I think the next time we do this, we'll probably do chapters 11 through like 21, somewhere around there. But this Sabaoth character I had never even heard the name before. So this is my first time getting any experience with him, and learning about him is cool. The whole clone thing is super fascinating. The force power with the clone, like he's got full on like Sith power. Like they didn't use the word Sith at all. I don't know if that was a thing or not in Legends or in this period. I'm not super up to speed on Legends and stuff like that, but they use Dark Jedi a lot, which I think is a really interesting thing to kind of touch on. I'm just fascinated by that. I think that whole situation is probably the thing that I'm most curious about. We're getting, like there was a mention of Dagobah. We're going to Dagobah. We're going to go see Lando. Super awesome. And just the battles, the story, the dialogue, and it just seems like all these characters are exactly where they should be at this point. 5 years, I believe, after Return of the Jedi and the fall of the Death Star and the death of the Emperor and Vader. But yeah, through the first 10 chapters, I'm blown away. I love it. There's emotion. And again, anytime we get Luke, I'm gonna be in that mode. Like, I don't know if we're gonna get Yoda at any point, but there's just so much in this book already. I just can't wait to see where it goes. And through the first 10, I absolutely love it. So yeah, leave all your comments and let's just jump into some if you guys have any questions or comments that you guys want to talk about. Zahn had Lucas's support. Hearing you recap the story, I remember feeling these stories just fit as a true continuation of the original trilogy. That was a question that I actually was going to ask you guys. Thank you for mentioning that. It felt like George Lucas had some sort of input in this. It felt like Timothy Zahn respected the source material and the creator. It felt like an obvious thing that Timothy Zahn would talk to George about making this, and because it feels like, again, like you said, it fits. It feels like it fits with coming right out of the sequel or the original trilogy, going through all the struggles, like the characters, like it feels like them. And yeah, that totally makes sense. I feel like it respects the originals enough and evolves it into new ways, challenges that make sense but are new. Yeah, I mean, so far, yeah, for sure. Because you're seeing, like, I feel like the building of the New Republic is a challenge for everyone, and you're seeing Leia getting pulled in so many directions, and you see the relationship with Han and Leia and wanting like Han, the guy who was like, oh, it's just a bunch of hokey tricks and whatever he said, I don't remember the quote exactly, but like to hear Han coming out and being like, this needs to happen for you, you need a saber, you need to be training with your brother. It's just a very interesting transition. And then the fact that she keeps getting pulled into politics, because obviously they need that also. And, you know, obviously Leia's a really important character. So, yeah, I'm super fascinated by that. Definitely a few new great characters to fall in love with. Yeah, absolutely. And even characters that we have been, like, again, reading this novel so late after it's been created and having the content that we do is also very interesting. Like, seeing the evolution of, like, really getting the true knowledge and history with Thrawn is really strong compared to kind of what we saw in Rebels. And seeing how Rebels did it and how they handled Thrawn, and then how the Ahsoka show is going to handle Thrawn. Live action, I can't wait for that. I think it's going to be so cool. But I feel like the character development is awesome, from the characters that we know to the characters that we don't know. And yeah, I think that's super fascinating. The main character that I'm most interested in that's new is Sabayoth, because that whole situation, that whole story sounds so cool. Those books are the reason I was so angry at the sequel. I knew what could have been, and they just crapped all over the characters in the sequels. Yeah, my biggest problem, and I've talked about this a lot, my biggest problem with what they did with the characters in the sequel trilogy, specifically Luke, was just there was no visual storytelling to support what happened. It was just a bunch of like, oh, hey, this happened. Oh, hey, here's like a quick flashback of an aftermath. Like, for me, like, I know a lot of people aren't the same, and that's what makes opinions so great. I need visual storytelling in my shows and movies to support character change and character growth. When it comes to the main characters who have a major track record, that's my biggest thing. I have no problem with Luke turning into what he became. The problem I have with it is that there's no story to support it. Just saying all this stuff about Ben and, oh, he was so much more powerful than anyone else. It's like, well, show us. We never saw Ben Solo that strong and powerful or that scary. We never got to see Luke's students or grow a connection with any of the people that were slaughtered at his temple. All we saw was an aftermath. And even in Rey's vision in The Force Awakens, we see somebody getting killed, but we can't see their face. We don't have a connection with them. There's no emotion there. And that's why Anakin's flip worked so well in the prequels. We had the emotion and the impact in the story to support him turning dark. And we saw him killing younglings. We saw the impact on Padme. We saw the impact on Obi-Wan. And it's just something that like guts you. Just Order 66 is just so insane. But that's my biggest problem with that character development from the sequels. It's just, there's just a lack of story to support the whole situation. And one of my biggest things that I'm not even sure about is I still don't understand why Luke, if he wanted to disconnect from the Force and die, why would he go to the first ever Jedi temple? Everything that I've ever seen in any content, and again, I'm not an encyclopedia, I don't have every piece of content watched. I don't understand the idea of him going to a Jedi temple to disconnect and disappear. Everything that I've ever seen, whether it's from Rebels or from Mandalorian or from anything, you go to these temples to connect, to find answers, to search for stuff. You don't go there to disconnect. So there's just a lot of missing storytelling that I have a problem with. It's not necessarily the idea of people changing. People change all the time. You just need to give good backstory and support for that. I haven't really seen your Star Wars reactions just because I'm barely getting into it, but it seems to me it means a lot to you. How old were you when you saw the first, and what was your reaction to it? Star Wars means a lot to me, yeah. It probably means more to me than it should, to be honest. I probably take it a lot more serious than I should because end of the day, it's just a movie or a show. But I have an older brother who's 5 years older than me. So I didn't get to see any of the original trilogy in theaters. I wasn't old enough. But I grew up on it. Like Star Wars I have all the original VHS tapes still. So having a brother 5 years older, we had all the toys. Literally every piece of toy that was Star Wars related, we had. My brother, I think he still has a bunch of stuff. We had like these carrying cases that were, I think one of them was Darth Vader and the other one was C-3PO, where you could store all the like little characters and stuff. But yeah, I grew up like basically since birth. It's been my favorite stuff. And I think primarily like my parents, my brother, it was big in our household. So I basically, since the day I can remember, I love Star Wars. So it's always been like my favorite thing growing up.